Today we're going to start Ayin Ches, Ayin Ches Amid Beis. That's 78b. And we're going to start Amar Hanabarada. It's a little under the middle of the page. By me, the line starts Achriz. Then it goes, the end of the line is Amar Chada. Okay, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. Of our learning, we should have the base of English immediately. This week is 4 years of this year. We started Rosh Chodesh Sivan 4 years ago. So, okay, so Amar of Hanabarada, Nesinim David Gazer Alayim. Hanabarada says that the Nesinim is the tribe from the Girgashi, right? From the or the Chivi, they're Canaanites that converted, and David made a decree against them. And we're going to go through the story here, how that happened, that the decree that they can't marry in. Shenemar vayikra melech legevainim. The king called to the Gevainim, vayemer aleim. He said to them. Now, before it says what he said to them, the pasuk goes on to explain who they were. It says, "V'hagevainim leime b'nei Yisrael heima v'gomer." The Gevainim are not from the descendants of the Jewish people. So I think what the Gemara is saying is that was part of the decree that the king said by Yikra Hamelech LeGevainim, that they are not from the Jewish people. Not just the narrator is saying that, by the way, they're not from the Jewish people, but that's actually what he pronounced, that they're not from the Jewish people. You follow? There's two ways of reading the verse. My taima, Gazer Alaya, what's the reason why the king David HaMelech made the decree against him? The Ksiv, it says in the Pasuk by Yirav, he made David Shalish Shanim Shana Achar Shana. There was a famine, the Pasuk before says there was a famine during the days of David for 3 years, consecutive. Rishaina, the first year, Amar Lehem Shema Oivdei Avedis Kechavim Yesh B'chem. Why was there a famine? What are we doing wrong? So he said maybe there's idol worship. Now, why would that cause a famine? Because the Ksiva Avadatem Elihim Acherim Mishtachab Yisam Lamatzar Sashamayim. It says V'layamatar the Gomer. It says that if there's they serve other gods, they bow down to them, then the heavens will close up and there won't be any rain. But they checked, there was no idol worship going on. That's not the cause of the famine. Shnia, the next year, maybe there's sexual sins. The Ksiv, the Yimnu Revivim, Umalkish Leihaya, Isha Zaina Hayalach, the Gaimer. There was no rain, there was no second rain. Yeah, second rain is the Malkish. And the forehead of a Isha Zaina, promiscuous woman, was there. It means that because of sexual sins, the rain will stop. But they checked, that's not what was going on. Shlisha Samalem, in the third year, Shema Paiski Tzedakah Bram Yeshbechem Veinaistim. Maybe what's happening is people have pledged money, but they didn't give it. Clouds, wind, and no rain. Ishmisal b'misa sheker. It's a man that praises himself with his pledges, his false gifts. In the show they make these big pledges, but then you have to pay them afterwards. That's so it's like the clouds and everything is false alarm. Nothing happens. So Bad Kavlei Matzo, they checked that wasn't the issue. Amar Eina Davar Tali Yalabi. Must be something that I'm doing. Miyad Vayevakish David Espnei Hashem. It says that David sought out the face of Hashem. Maihi, what does that mean? Amar Ish Lakish, Shashal B'Urim V'Tumim, that he asked from the Urim V'Tumim. My mashma, where did you get Vayevakish David Espnei Hashem that he asked the Urim V'Tumim? Amar Rabbi Lazar Asya Pnei Pnei. We have a Gzer Shava. It's Ksiv Hacha Vayevakish David Espnei Hashem. Over here in the pasuk, this is Shmuel Beis, right? He says that he sought out the face of Hashem. We have another pasuk that says that they asked the Urim in front of Hashem. This must have been by the Mekoshesh, where they didn't know the law, right? Okay. Vayomer Hashem Hashem says, El Shol vel beis adamim al asher hemes hagivainim. It's because of Shol and the house of blood that killed the Givainim. That's what they did wrong. This is the Urim Tumah. So it says El Shol. What's it because of Shol? It's dividing it into two things. You could read this verse. It says that it's because Shol and his house, which is filled with blood, but the Gemara doesn't do that. The Gemara divides it up. The Gemara says, first of all, there's this famine because of Shol. Shlei nispid kalacha. Shol was not, they didn't eulogize Shol properly. He died in battle. There wasn't a proper eulogy. So Beis Adamim, what does that mean? The house of blood. Al asher hemes hagivainim, because he killed the Givainim. V'chi heichen matzina b'shol shemes hagivainim. Where do we find Shol killed the Givainim? Money. Can you adjust the air conditioning? Thank you. He didn't kill the Givainim. He killed Naiver Akayanim, the city of Naiv. And because of that, it's considered like he killed the Givainim. Now, what is that? Well, it turns out that Naiver Akayanim was supported, the water and the food came from the Givainim. Now, the Givainim lost their jobs. They lost their income. They were the carriers of the water and the wood choppers, right? Do we have here that they were the wood choppers? No, here we just say, that's right. Rashi says. So, the water and the food they would get from Naiver Akayanim, because Naiver Akayanim was supported by the wood, because these were the workers that would bring their water and wood. Why does it have to say Mayim? They had their own water. They were water drawers. They didn't have to get water from Naiver Akayanim. I don't know what that means. So it's considered, because they lost the job, it's considered that he killed them. Katava el Shol shleinis kalacha v'katava al asher hemes hagivainim. There's two complaints here, that the Shol wasn't eulogized properly, and also that he killed out Naiver Akainim. It's like contradictory. You're telling me that he was so righteous, and then you're telling me that he was guilty of murder. Says Ian, yeah. Seek out God, all humble people of the earth, that his judgment he does. When he does judgment, that's where he also says what he does. That means he says the good things that a person does, even while he's being judged. A person doesn't just because he did something wrong, we don't forget all the good things that he did. So he was supposed to have been eulogized properly, even though we're mentioning now that he did something wrong. Amar David says, Shol nafgalahu Tracy Archishata. I don't know how to rectify this because it's already 12 months. You don't do the eulogy then. It's after the 12 months. Now it turns out that it was much more than 12 months. It was already 30 years. That's what Rashi says. But that's already too long. However, Nesinim, regarding the Nesinim, let's call them, it will appease them. Vayikra Melech, what's the Aleph? Miyad, immediately, we add in the word. Vayikra Melech legavayna vayemer lehem, ma'asa lechem, ma'achaper, u'baruch nachlas Hashem. King calls to the Gavainim. He says, what can I do for you? What can I be atoned for? And you'll bless the inheritance of God. But Yom Rulai, they said to him, Gavainim said, Ein lanu kesav v'zav v'mshal v'mbeisai, ve'ein lanu ish gaimer. Yitan lanu shiva anashim mibanavu kanam la'Hashem. Gaimer said, we don't have a monetary claim against Shaul and on his household. We don't have a specific person that we want. Just give us 7 of his sons and we'll hang them up. Well, we just want revenge. Rashi says Tliya means to hang them. Yeah, I'm not sure what the root is. Matthias Paisino, he tried to appease them in other ways, but they didn't accept that. Amar, he said, our nation has 3 signs, the Jewish people, 3 characteristics. Rachmanim, they're compassionate. Baishanim, they're Rachmanim is merciful. Baishanim is that they're bashful. And Gaim Lechasadim, and they do acts of kindness. Shamefaced is Baishanim. So what we just saw here is
like cowardly almost.
Yeah. Same idea. But we're going to bring verses for this. But the point over here is that the Gevainim were not compassionate. Why? Because they wanted revenge, even though they were going to gain nothing. What did they gain when someone loses his children? Doesn't do it any good. Not like they said, I want his money. I want his money. At least they get money. Here they don't get anything. Yeah. Right. If they would have asked the money, we would have said we want to make a profit. Yeah. Okay. So Rachmanim diksiv v'nasan lecha rachamim v'richam chaver becha. Where do we see that the Jewish people compassionate? It says he gave to you compassion, and he had compassion on you, and he made you many. V'nasan lecha rachamim not only means that Hashem was compassionate, but it means he gives you compassion to be compassionate. Baishanim, shameful, shamefaced, so that his fear should be on your face. It means the fear of Hashem. That he should command his sons after this is talking about Abraham. He chose Abraham because he would command his descendants to act in that way. Shamru, Lasis, something Mishpat, Tzedakah, something. That they'll do acts of kindness. Anyone that has these signs is worthy of it being attached to this nation, which means that not the Gevainim. That we're explaining the decree why they are not allowed to marry in. Takes the 2 sons of Ritzpah Basaya, that these were born to Shaul. Those 2. And 5 of the sons of Michal Bashal, Ashayolda La Adriel ben Barzilai Hamechulsi, that were born to Adriel, the grandsons, Ben Barzilai Hamechulsi. Okay. And Maishnahani, why were these taken and not the other children? These are the ones that are going to be hung. Amaravuna Aviram Lefnei Aaron, Kolshar and Koltei Lamisa, Kolshain Aaron Koltei Lachayim. They walked in front of the ark. If the ark held them back, they couldn't move further, then they were put to death. Koltei means like absorbed. It held them. The other ones, if they could make it by, then they went to life. It sounds like
Fell over off
No.
the wagon.
no, that was much earlier. This was that incident was 7 years into the kingdom when they brought the ark. Yeah, that was much earlier.
No, this is in Shmuel.
No, that was 7 years, and maybe it was 20 years in. I don't remember. But this is 30 years. So, Masav Rav Chana bar Katina vayachmal hamelech al Mephibosheth ben Yonasan ben Shol shlei aviru. V'chimasa panim yesh bedavar. 1 second. Rav Chana bar Katina says that the king had compassion on Mephibosheth, the son of Yonasan ben Shol. Yonasan Shol, Mephibosheth, Yonasan's son, Mephibosheth. The king has compassion on him because of the agreement that David and Yonasan had, the friendship. So he wants to protect him. He says, "V'chimasa panim yesh bedavar." Is this how, if there's a court law that someone is supposed to be executed? So the king says, "Well, he's my friend. I can." This is not how law works. Ela she'vira v'koltu. Rather, he brought him by and he was supposed to be put to death. He davened, and then they let him go. The Aaron lets him leave. That still doesn't work. He davens and then it goes out. This is favoritism. He davens from before the verdict should be there, and then so he was never absorbed. We have another question. Why did children die because of the father's sins? That's the big question here.
Right, yeah.
It's better that we should uproot the letter of the Torah and that we should not have a chil Hashem. What's the chil Hashem? Chil Hashem is that we had converts. We didn't treat them properly. And nothing happens. That's a chil Hashem. So the Kiddush Hashem is that when we take punishment out, that the converts weren't treated properly. Vatikach ritzva basaya sasak vatateo le'alatzur mitchilas ktsir ad netach mayim aleim and hashamayim v'leinos neif hashamayim lenuach aleim yoimam v'chayis asad alayla. Ritzva basaya, who's the mother, is protecting them. I guess she's on a rock from the beginning of the summer till after the winter. She doesn't let the birds go on the corpses are hanging, and she doesn't let the birds go on them. She doesn't let the wild animals go to them at night. The Gemara says, "You're not allowed to leave the bodies hanging overnight." Yeah, they're hanging. Sounds like for 6 months. It says, "I'm Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Reb Shimon ben Yitzadok." Rabbi Yochanan says the name of Reb Shimon ben Yitzadok. Mutav shetaka reisachas min haTorah. V'yiskadish shem shemayim b'farhesya. It's better to uproot a letter of the Torah here, means a rule of the Torah. And there should be a Kiddush Hashem. What's the Kiddush Hashem? All the passerbys would say, Mativa Shalela, what are these bodies hanging? Halala b'nei malachim. We say, those are the princes. Ma'azu, what did the princes do? It says, Pashti Yidayim Begerim Gerurim. They stretch out their hands. They mistreated the converts. What a Gerurim. The low converts. Simple converts, probably. Wow, this is quite a nation. This is a nation that we should be attached to. If this is what they do to the princes, they mistreat the converts. So for regular people, for sure would be punished. And if this is how they mistreat converts, for sure the Jewish people themselves, they should be punished if they're mistreated. Miyad nisvasu al Yisrael me'avachamishamelef. They had 150,000 converts because of these bodies that were hanging. Shneimar bil shleim shivasal elef neisi sabel, shmeina elef chitzev bahar. Because Shleima had 70,000 people that carried, like porters, that carried the stones, and 80,000 that were hewing from the mountain, the stones. The Gemara says, how do you know those were converts? It says,
This was at what time?
this is the beginning of Shleima's kingdom. He has these converts.
Hewing to cruise the stones for the base of Mikdash.
Right. The converts that came from says maybe these were Jewish people. It says Shleima didn't make the children of Israel into slaves. You know, they were there was a tax, a labor tax, where the people had to serve every other month. They would have to go and then come back, and then they would go again. And so who were these people that were doing it? There were these converts that
30,000 people
at a time, right?
30,000 men at a time.
Right. Right. Vidilma Dugzar Baalma. Maybe it says on the side it's supposed to be Rungad. Maybe these were just day workers. How do you know these were actual slaves? Almihacha. Vayisaper, Vayispar, Shleima, Kol Anoshim, Agarim Asher Beretz Yisrael, Vayispar Shleima. Vayimtzu Me'ah v'chamisha melech, v'goymer, v'yasmem Shimel, v'leisasabel Shmeina v'chaytz bahar. He counted the people, and there were 150,000. 70,000 were the carrying the stones, and 80,000 were hewing the stones from the mountain. When Nesinim David Gazer Alayim, the Gemara now asks, the Nesinim, it was from King David. Moshe Gazer Alayim. We already know that the water carriers were much earlier. It says Mechayte v'tzechad shei mimecha. How do we know that they weren't allowed to marry in? Rashi is trying to answer this question. So the fact that they're called Chait Ve'etzim must be that they're not from the Jewish people. And then it must be that they're slaves. If they're slaves, then they can't marry in. So it says, Moshe Gaza Lehudara, but David Gaza Lekuli Dara. Moshe only had a decree on them that they couldn't marry in for that generation, but afterwards they should have been able to. So David decreed on them that they can't. Vakati that's the Gemara's question. Vakati Yeshua Gazer Alaya, wasn't it Yeshua? The Ksiv Vayitnim Yeshua Bayem Chait Ve'etzim Shei V'mayim Leidol Mizbeach Hashem, that it was Yeshua that made them into the water carriers. Yeshua Gazer Bisman Shebeis Migdash Kayim. David Gazer Bisman Shebeis Migdash Kayim. David made a decree forever, even after the temple is destroyed. Now we have Rashi and Chumash tells us that there was another group that came. It wasn't the same group. Our Gemara looks like it's the same group. No.
It just says of one of the 7 Canaanite nations. It doesn't really specify. Which one.
So then the Gemara tells us, we may Rebbe Bikshal Hat in Asinim. Rebbe wanted to allow them to marry in. Amalem, in the days of Rebbe, not Rebbe. In the days of Rebbe, they wanted. Amalem Rebbe says, Chalkenu nater chelik mizbeach miyater. We can say that they're not our slaves, but they're slaves for the temple. We can allow. We can't permit that. This comment argues on what Reb Chia bar Abba says, because Reb Chia bar Abba said, "Name Reb Yechanan and Chilek Edo Loyla Maser Chilek Mizbech Bezman Shebeisim Mikdash Kayim Maser Ein Beisim Mikdash Kayim Shari." He says exactly the opposite. He said, "There's no Beisim Mikdash." So what are you saying? They're working for the temple. They're working for the temple. There's no temple, so that we could permit, but our portion we can't permit. Okay. According to Reb Chia bar Abba, I mean, they could do hefker beznet. If they do permit it, then they will. So according to Reb Chia bar Abba, they could have allowed the Nesinim back. And according to this statement, according to Rebbe, the statement in the name of Rebbe, they weren't allowed to allow them back. Here we have a new Mishnah now. Rabbi Yeshua. Yeshua says, Shemati, I heard Shasaris, that a eunuch, Chalitz, he can do Chalitza. That means if his brother passed away, he left the widow, the eunuch brother, the surviving brother, can do Chalitza. And if a eunuch was married and he passed away, so the brother does Chalitza to the widow of the eunuch.
I can't imagine he can't do Yibum.
Right. We'll see it soon. The Hasaris, but I also heard Rabbi Yeshua says that the eunuch, that he doesn't do Chalitza and you don't do Chalitza to his wife. It's contradictory statements. Mainly Lafarsh, I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, I like the pshat that we have several times Rabbi Yeshua saying this, that Shemati Veinli Lafarsh. We have it also in Mishnayos and Taras. I forget exactly where. But why is Rabbi Yeshua saying the one that says this? Because the Mishnah says that Ashri Yoladate, regarding the 5 students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the praise of Rabbi Yeshua is that praised is his mother that brought him to the Beis HaMedrash when he was a child, listened to the studies. Yeah, so she would bring him in the carriage, in the cradle. He should hear the learning. So what would happen is he would hear statements that the sages were saying when he was a baby. So when he would ask, we didn't know the pshat, he would cry. They didn't know what he's crying about. They thought they'd give him a bottle. So, but really he was asking, like, what's the pshat? Explain what you're saying. So that's why he says, Shamati v'eni de lefarish. I heard, but I don't know the pshat. I wasn't able to get the answer.
Explain. I was too young to.
I was too young to. They didn't know what I was asking them.
Is that just like
It's a pshat. It's not a. Doesn't have to be with what really happened. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, Ani afarish. Rabbi Akiva is really a student of Rabbi Yeshua. He says, I can explain to you the pshat. Sris Adam, if he was castrated, and that's why he's a eunuch, then chalitz v'choltzim leishtei. Then he can do chalitza on his brother's widow, and chalitza is done to his wife if he passed away. Because at one time this was a marriage, or he was eligible to do ibum. Sris Chama, if he was born like this, Sris Chama is the term that he was naturally he was a eunuch, then because he never had the obligation of chalitza. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer says no. It's exactly the opposite. It's exactly the opposite. Someone that was born as a eunuch, he does chalitza, and chalitza is done to his wife. Why? Because that was possible to heal. However, Sris Adam, someone that was castrated, because that can't heal. Today it can, but that's with surgery. So, if he's castrated.
Oh, back then.
It can't be. It cannot be back then.
But what can be?
Yeah, I have a problem with this because we said before that there was a way of healing. Well, maybe not a
Said
saris.
there was like some kind of.
We said krus, not a krus. We said a krus shafcha was able to be healed. Remember that krus shafcha, the one that was cut. We said that we put him. Yeah. Right. Maybe there's other ways. Definitely, if there was a hole, we said that it could heal. They put fat in this and they sealed it up. They put this worm and thing that sucked the blood. Remember that? Okay. Hayed Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira. Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira. He testified al Ben Megusas. Someone by the name of Ben Megusas. Shahib Yerushalayim. Sris Adam. He was a Sris Adam. It means he was castrated. The Yibma Yasishtay. And when he passed away, Yibam was done on his wife by the fellow's brother. L'kayim div Rabbi Akiva. This testimony supports Rabbi Akiva because Rabbi Akiva says that since he had a moment when he was eligible because he was castrated, he wasn't born like this, so therefore even Yibam is performed. Hasaris leichaletz v'lemiyavim. Now we have a statement. There's a saris, someone that's a eunuch, he doesn't do chalitza or yibam. The same as with an islandess. If that's the wife, she doesn't do. If she's an islandess, that means she didn't have full maturity, so she's underdeveloped, sexually underdeveloped. So she doesn't have chalitza or yibam. Asaris shechalas liyibamte. If a saris passed away and chalitza was done to his wife, no, the opposite. Saris that did chalitza, lay pasla. He didn't make her pasal, but bala. But if he lives with her, then pasla. Then he does make the wife pasal. When it says pasal, it's referring to kahuna. She can't marry a kaya now. Because that was not what was supposed to be done, and she had relations with her brother-in-law. Now, if it would have been a mitzvah of yibam, then it would have been fine, but there was no mitzvah of yibam because he was a saris. If an islandess, if they did chalitza, she's still eligible to a kayan. But if they had relations with her, paslu pnei shebilasa bilasnos, because that was a sin, because they were not supposed to do yibam. So it comes out it's a brother-in-law. That was a question. Rabbi Yehuda holds no, but the other opinions hold yes. The Gemara is going to mention that soon. Very good. Now the Gemara says, Michti, what's going on here? Shaminan l'Rebbe Akiva, the merchaybe laven kechaybe krisis dami. The chaybe krisis laven echalitza v'yibam nenu. If a person was castrated, then he's not supposed to marry into the congregation. That's a negative prohibition. La yava yitzuadaka v'kal Hashem, right? He's not supposed to marry in. Now, Rabbi Akiva's view is that just like yibam is not performed on a close relative, let's say the person's Shimon's daughter was married to Reuven, his brother. Then Reuven passed away. So Shimon does not do yibam on his daughter or on the tzara, on the second wife, right? He can't marry his daughter. And so, or on any of the wives, wife chayve krisis or whatever, you don't do yibam or chalitza. You don't have to do anything. Now, Rabbi Akiva's view is that same rule would apply if there's a prohibition of a lav. Chayve lavin is just like chayve krisis. So why are we saying over here that you do chalitza, according to Rabbi Akiva, for Sris Adam? Sris Adam, the person was castrated, it's a lav, it's a negative prohibition, he shouldn't be married. So that's a prohibition. Can't do chalitza. There's no chalitza at all. just like if it would be an Issachar. Same applies to Isserlav. Because he can't do Yibam. He can't do Yibam. The Yibam would have been prohibited. So therefore you don't have to do Chalitza either. Amar Rabami Hachama Yaskin Kanchnasa Achiv Giyeris. A simple answer. Ruvain was married to a Giyeris. She's not considered part of the congregation. So now, when it comes time for Shimon to do Chalitza, even if Shimon is a saris, is castrated, he's allowed to marry her because she's not part of the congregation. It's only B'Kal Hashem that was the issue. We have a simple answer. Rabbi Akiva Savlaka Rabbi Yosi da Makal Gerim Le'Krikal. Now we had a discussion: is Kahal Gerim considered the congregation of the converts? Is that considered part of the Kal Hashem, part of the Jewish people, when it comes to these prohibitions? When we said that someone that was castrated wasn't allowed to marry another someone from the community, is that including a convert? So Rabbi Yosi held that he's allowed to marry a convert.
And the Ger marry their moms.
Yeah. Right? Yihachi, if that's the case, so why did we say you do chalitza? Yivu minami miyabim, then let him do yibam. We didn't say that in the Mishnah. The Gemara says in enachinami, you're right. You can do yibam as well. Why did Rabbi Yeshua chayletz? Rabbi Yeshua said chayletz, so he was continuing with discussing chayletz, but that's not really the issue here. That wasn't the only solution. We have other solutions. We could have done yibam as well. Dekanami, I'll prove it to you. Diktani, hey, Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseral ben Megusa Shei B'Shleim Sris Adam b'Yivma Sishtei L'Chaim Divrei Kiva Shmamina. When we said the story in the Mishnah, we were talking about yibam being performed. You see, not only do you do chalitza, you can even do yibam. It's a proof that according to Rabbi Akiva, you can even do yibam. And what was the case? The case was that it was kahal gerim because the brother was married to a giyaris. Masiv Rabbah. Rabbah has a question on this teretz. Tuadaka, someone that's testicles are crushed, krus shavcha, or his organ is cut, sris adam, is castrated, bazakin, or an older person. There's a problem with the older person in here. Shouldn't be part of this list, but he's here for. You can do yibam or chalitza. Ketzad, what are we talking about? Mesu, if they died, Valhem Nashim, and they had wives, Valhem Achim, and they have brothers. Vamdu Achim Vasu Maimer ben Shisem, if they did Maimer, Venastu get, or they gave a get, Aisha Chaltzor, they did Chalitza, Masha Asu Asu, Vim Balukanu. And if they did, the brothers did Yibam, then they're acquired. Mesu Achim Vamdu Haim, let's say the brothers died and these ones stood up. And they did Maimer Venas to get a if they did Yibam, the Yibam works, but they're not allowed to keep them. It's very clear that they were supposed to do Chalitza. They were not supposed to do Yibam because Yibam is would be problematic because it's Kal Hashem, but nevertheless they're doing Chalitza. How are they doing Chalitza? We're assuming now that this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that if there was a negative prohibition, they wouldn't be allowed to do Yibam. And if they're not allowed to do Yibam, then they're not allowed to do Chalitza, according to Rabbi Akiva.
And they can't do Yibam because they can't have kids?
They can't do Yibam because they're not allowed to marry. They're not allowed to enter into a marriage. So we answered before Rabami answered that we're talking about that she was a convert, and there's no problem. But from this price, we see that we're not dealing with a convert, because it says that after if Yibam was done, they have to be separated, because he's not allowed to stay married to her. Taisu says, maybe just say it's not Rabbi Akiva. Somehow it knows that it's
This
Rabbi
wasn't
Akiva.
talking about,
Yeah. We could have answered this, that it's not Rabbi Akiva.
this wasn't talking about those who cannot reproduce.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is.
And nevertheless, we saw that they were supposed to do chalitza, but not yibam. And according to Rabbi Akiva, that doesn't work. If you don't do yibam, you don't do chalitza in this case because of the negative prohibition. So the Gemara says, Ella Amar Rabba. Rabba gives his own teretz. We're talking about that there was a requirement to do chalitza or yibam because he wasn't castrated yet, and only afterwards he got castrated. So in order to take that away, he has to do chalitza.
Yeah, when it's
because of the Zika.
About an elderly person, there's one that can have relations and others.
Yeah, that's a
not
problem.
not
The
even
problem with
children.
the problem with this is it said that they have to be separated, and one of the instances was an elderly person, and that's what doesn't fit with this with the list.
Comment again, please.
It says early authorities note that an elderly man does not belong to this category in all respects. As the Tan is stressing that although he cannot have children in practice, since he is inherently capable of fathering children, he is obligated in levirate marriage.
Levirate marriage.
Yeah.
But he's lost it.
But nevertheless, he still has to do yibam. Yeah, it wouldn't be the other ones are prohibitions. That's our discussion. The older person, what's the problem?
Distinguish between an elderly man who no longer be capable of having relations and one who can, but cannot have children.
Oh, maybe that's an answer. Maybe when it says zaken, it means that he can't even have relations. That could resolve the issue. That there is no concept of yibam. But then it wouldn't fit Vimbalu. I don't know. Okay. Amalei Abaya. What we're seeing here is something interesting. We're seeing that once there was an obligation of yibam, even though now he's not able to do it, but he still has to do chalitza. That's an interesting point. Amalei Abaya v'leisi yisr p'tzua v'nidchei yasei di yibam. Abaya asks exactly this point. 1 second. Right now, he's a p'tzua daka. He's castrated. That should push off the obligation to do yibam. Milay tanan Rabbi Gamliel Aimer miyana vim lav tamtanat shetag v'teitzei alazu misham achaysisha al miyasi isra achaysisha v'dachi achinami nesi yaseh p'tzua v'nidchei. Brings an interesting example of this. See, what happened was there were two brothers that were married to two sisters. One of the brothers was married to the sister that was very young, a little girl. And when it came time for the Reuven was married to the older girl, and the older sister, Leah. And Shimon is married to Rachel, but she's very young. So Reuven passed away. Now Shimon can't do yibam on Leah because of his wife, Rachel. Now there is a possibility of getting out of that. The way of getting out of that is that if Rachel rejects Shimon, she walks out of the marriage.
Yeah, because
So that's
she's
called mian. It's
under
underage. She can walk out without a get, and then he would be eligible. It's as if there was never a marriage there. He would be eligible. The only problem is that right now you can't do anything because we don't know if she's going to go out. So the Gemara gives this option. Rabbi Gamliel says if she does mian, then good. But if she doesn't do mian, then what happens? She matures. She becomes an adult. She can't walk out of the marriage. She becomes a real wife. And then there's no chalitza at all. Now, 1 second. Before, there could have been chalitza. Now there's no chalitza. You see that just because originally there would have been a requirement of chalitza doesn't mean that requirement continues. At this point, when Rachel matured, there is no yibam or chalitza because she's now a real wife of Shimon. So the obligation before just disappeared. So too over here, the obligation before on Shimon was castrated recently. The obligation before to do yibam, and now it goes off. So everything should go off, just like went off by when Shimon was married to Rachel that was young. it went off. The whole obligation of chalitza went off. You don't say that because there was originally an obligation, somehow you have to resolve it. It all disappears. That's what we're saying here. Elam Rabbi Yosef, so Rabbi Yosef says, Hai Tana, Hach de Tana de Be Rabbi Akivi, Damar Mechayve Lavin de She'er Havi Mamzer, Mechayve Lavin Grady Lai Havi Mamzer. Rabbi Yosef says the whole thing is based on an assumption that's not accurate. The whole question over here was based on, because Rabbi Akiva says that Chayve Lavin create a mamzer, so therefore there's no marriage. There's no marriage at all. That's not really true. Chayve Lavin, the negative prohibitions only of close relatives cause a mamzer. But this is not a negative prohibition of a close relative. This is a negative prohibition of someone that was castrated. That's a different story.
Question is, this question about elderly people who are no longer capable of having children must be, I think, it would be a practical question today.
Right.
What is it based on today? If a 75-year-old widow never had children,
Yeah.
her husband dies, and she has an 80-year-old brother-in-law.
Right. Right.
Is there a chalitza?
I think so. Yeah. Remember that joke with the guy, this old guy goes to get life insurance. They say, I can't sell you. So what do you mean? Last week you sold to my parents. They say, how old are they? They're 100 and some. This is what? I sold to them. He said, that's nothing. And what did he say? Something about, and they were just getting remarried or something. So he said, really? They're getting married? They said, yeah, well, actually, they weren't gonna, but their parents are forcing them. Okay. So, what do we have here? Ikari kan lakim alachiv shem v'halav bar hachiyu. I was asking, according to this that we learned in the Mishnah, chalitza is performed, and not only is chalitza performed, but even yibam is performed. That's what we learned from Rabbi Akiva, that chalitza is performed. This is what is the point of chalitza for someone that was castrated, or what's the point of yibam for someone that was castrated? You're supposed to create a name for the brother. How are you supposed to do that? It's castrated. Amarava. Now, 1 second. Gemara here is asking a little bit different. That the brother, one of the cases was that if the brother was the one that passed away, was a eunuch, so then why should you have to do yibam? Why should he have to do yibam? He couldn't have had his own children. Rava says, 1 second. If you're going to say that because at the time he passed away, he wasn't able to have children, then you'll never have to do yibam, because every older person that dies, where he's sick or something, the moment of his death, right before he actually dies, he's totally incapable of having children. He's a geisus. He's on his deathbed. So he's not capable of having children. And if that would exempt his wife from yibam, then every woman is always going to be exempt from yibam, because the moment before he died, he was as if he was castrated. He's not able to have children. Now, so this is supposed to be an answer to Olav Bar Hachiyu. So why? Because what we're saying is that we're not looking at how he was at the end of his life, looking at how he was before. And since before he was capable, so therefore that's what we say, that there was an obligation of yibam and chalitza, because earlier on. So just because at the end of his life he wasn't able to have children, that doesn't stop the yibam and chalitza. That's Rabba's proof. Now the Gemara says that, one second, Rabbi Eliezer Pruka de Rava Pirchi, according to Rabbi Eliezer, remember Rabbi Eliezer says that a person that's born as a eunuch, he does chalitza. But a Sris Adam doesn't do chalitza. There's no chalitza for a Sris Adam. Why? Because he has no refuah. If that's the case, then there should never be any chalitza, because every person on his deathbed, it becomes like a Sris Adam. So it's Hashem kichishusa the aschilabei. That doesn't mean that he's really considered castrated. That just means that he's weak because of his dying. That's not what we're talking about. Weak because of his dying. In others, you have to differentiate between someone that's weak because he's dying and someone that can't have children because he's castrated. Now the Gemara says, what's an example? I have to plug in the computer. It's going down. Just 1 second.
So it's, the bottom line isn't necessarily if you don't have children really.
Yeah, it's there. Bottom line is, if he was able to have children, he still has the obligation. That's what we're learning from Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Eliezer says differently. Rabbi Eliezer says that depends if he's able to be healed or not. Not if he was. Okay. What's how do we tell if a person was never able to have children? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Koshle Rashachas Bekashusei. That means even as a baby, he was never. There was a problem already from his birth. Minoy Yadinan. How do we know that there was a problem from his birth? How do you tell this? Amar Rabbi Kalamat Almayim Vein Kipa. When he urinates, it doesn't make a it's a kippah, it's an arc, right? I don't know. Sounds like it would just drip out.
That would be consistent, but it has to come out like an arrow.
Right, but that was the zera has to come out. Here it has to do with urinating, but it could be the same idea. Mimai Havi, what does this come from? What's the source of someone that would be a eunuch from birth? It says, the Api Amy Betira, it's his mother. She baked bread in the middle of the day, Bishasya Shichra Marka, and she drank this Marka beer. Strong beer or something. I thought beer was good for pregnant and nursing women. Probably not the alcohol, but I thought it was good. Yeah, apparently it's not. Unless it's according to Rashi, that it's diluted beer. She shouldn't have diluted it. What's the water in it? Okay. The extra heat in the body affected the reproductive parts of the baby. Rav Yosef, Haina de Shemana la'ami, or Rav Ami, Damar Kol Shemeim Elaki, Le'yadana Mainio. This is what I heard Rav Ami saying this. I didn't know what he was referring to. He says anyone that was that had this blemish from his mother's, from the womb already. Gemara says, how do you know that just because as a baby the urine didn't go in as an arc? So how do you know if maybe got healed? Gemara says, given the see, we're saying over here, according to Rabbi Akiva, that it's only if he never had a shasa kosher. It was never able to have children. But let's say Right now we see that he's a eunuch. And as a baby, we saw as a eunuch, but maybe sometime in middle, he was healed. He had a moment that he was healed. And then according to Rabbi Akiva, the halacha changes if he had a moment that he was healed. The Gemara says, given the tchilas of Seif Lag Lechashina, you don't suspect to that. Masav Rav Mari, Rav Chanina ben Tigna Seimer, Beit Kneis Shalish from B'tech Shmeinim Yaim. When it comes to a mum by a bachar, something on the eyelid or something, or on the eye, it says you have to check him in 80 days 3 times. You check him at the beginning, you check him at the end, you check him in the middle. Why do you have to check in the middle? Because you think maybe it healed in the middle. So obviously you have to check that maybe the person was healed sometime in the interim. It says, well, we're considering being able to reproduce as the entire body is affected by that, as opposed to just one limb or the eye or something, that maybe has its times when it's affected and time when it heals and time when it's affected and all of this. But for the whole body, that we don't suspect that maybe it healed in middle. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer said in the Mishnah, not like Rabbi Akiva says. He says that if the person was born as a eunuch, then you do chalitza. Why? Because he could be healed. And that means both if the person that passed away was a eunuch and also if the person that's the brother that's now doing chalitza. And if it's a sris adam, if the person was castrated, then because that doesn't heal, at least doesn't heal naturally, so then you don't do chalitza. It says for a minu. 1 second. We have a contradiction. It says ben esrim shana v'leivish de sares. Someone's 20 years old. He doesn't have 2 pubic hairs. Yavi rayashu ben esrim. It proves that he's 20 years old. And v'hu hasaris, and this is considered a saris. That means, I think it means that he has to have signs as well that he's a saris. And if that's the case, leichelitz v'lemiyavim. He doesn't do chalitza yibam. Ben esrim v'leivish de saris. If it's girl, same thing. 20. Yavi rayashu bas esrim v'aylenis. Leichelitz v'lemishabemis. This is considered the islandess, the underdeveloped girl that doesn't do chalitza yibam. Divrei Beisil, that's the words of Beisil. 20 years old for both. Bishami says no, it's 18 years old. This is like the different states; they have different ages for different things. So Rabbi Eliezer says, Hazachar kedivrei Beis Hillel. Nekeva kedivrei Beis Shammai. Rabbi Eliezer has this middle view. He says the men, 20. The women are 18 because the women mature quicker than men. Okay, now what's the point of Rabbi Eliezer? His point is that Beis Hillel said that if that's the case, if he's 20 years old or 18 years old, then he's not going to do chalitza because he's considered a saris. Big problem. Rabbi Eliezer said a saris does chalitza if he's born like that. How does Rabbi Eliezer say that he's going to follow the view of Beis Hillel when in the Mishnah he says that chalitza is performed? Beis Hillel's whole point is that you don't do chalitza if he reaches that stage. Amar Rami bar Dikuli, Amar Shmuel Chazabay Rabbi Eliezer changed his mind. Ibaylo, the Gemara has a question. Mahai Hadare, which one did he change his mind from? We don't know if he changed his mind that chalitza is performed and chalitza is not performed. This is Tashima. Will come and listen. The Tanya was taught in a brayso. Rabbi Eliezer Mesris Chama Chayletz V'Cholzol Nishtei changed his mind from the what we just quoted recently. We have a brayso that says that chalitza is performed. She came b'minan misrapen balasandra shel Mitzrayim, because such people could be healed in Alexandria. Alexandria, apparently, they had doctors that could heal someone that was a eunuch. Rabbi Eliezer He did not change his mind. Both statements are correct. Why was Rabbi Eliezer mixing in to the age of a eunuch? At what point is he considered a eunuch? He was trying to tell me when he gets punished for sins. Because when do we know? When does he reach maturity? Only after he has 2 pubic hairs. But he's a eunuch. He's not going to have hairs. So at what age is he going to be? It can't be 13, because at 13 they're waiting to see if he's going to grow hair. It says for a man it's at age 20, for a girl it's at age 18. But it's not because he was telling me the law of Yibam and Chalitza. Yibam and Chalitza actually holds that they have to do Yibam and Chalitza, even if they're a eunuch. So in other words, he's accepting the age for another reason, but he's not talking about the law that they were talking about. It's a good teretz.
The oldest known medical document that exists is from Alexandria.
Oh, really? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Who was in that document?
That's the early doctor. It was the
Remarkably old. Over 1,000 years before the Common Era. It was really, really old.
What contents did it?
he was Greek, right?
I've seen a facsimile.
There was a very good book called The Kosher Code. And it was a rabbi and a scientist in Boston. And they're discussing Hilchos Treifas. It goes through the Hilchos Treifas. It's actually, and the notes are based on early medicine, about what he's always quoting Galen, whatever it's called, Galen. He's quoting him the whole time, and something came up over there very interesting about what the Chachamim were thinking. He uses that early medicine to say what the Chachamim were thinking when they said this is a treifa, that's not a treifa. Yeah. Okay. Itmar stated, Achal chelev mi ben 12 v'yom echad ad ben 18 v'noldu by simani saris l'achar mikan evi shtei saris. I don't know why it has to say l'achar mikan evi shtei saris. The point is to become a saris. Once they're 18, and the shtei saris do nothing, right? They're already a saris. From 12 to 18, somewhere in the middle over there, they ate. Does it explain what the 2 hairs doing? It doesn't seem like it's doing anything. We're on page 80, on the in the middle of the page, 88. I don't think that's. Right. Yeah, let's take a look at what happens. Rav Amar Nasa Saris Lamafreya. Rav says that this takes us back to when he was 12, or not he, she was 12. We're using both ages here. When she was 12, she was really mature. So why didn't she have the hair? It's because she was a eunuch. I don't know if that's what the word that you use. She was never going to develop. Okay. Shmuel Amar, Katna Yasa Baisasha. No. She or he wasn't mature then. Question is, they did a sin back then, and it was unclear if they had reached maturity. We find out later that they're a eunuch. Do we go back? It's a very interesting discussion. Do you go back and say that they were mature? because we didn't have the information, but they were whoever they were. Now we found out. So Shmuel says no. Shmuel says we assume that they were children because we really don't know back then what they were. We just know now that it's very possible that they could have been mature. Maskifla, so we have Machlekes Rav and Shmuel about this. Maskifla Rav Yosef, L'Rav, Eilanis L'Rav Meir Yehela Knas. According to Rav, that says you go back and we say that you actually reached maturity. According to Rav Meir's view was that if someone seduces or rapes a girl, they have to pay a certain amount of money. Now, if the girl is young, if the girl is under 12, then she doesn't get this money. It's only if she's from in between 12 and 12 and a half. And then we said that if she's an islandess, we consider her under 12. One second. Why is she considered under 12? Why is she considered like a minor? Turns out that afterwards we find out that she was an islandess. When do we find that out? When she's 18. So we should go back and he should give the money. Why didn't the rapist have to give the money? Because she was a minor. It's only if she's 12. Only she reached that first level of maturity. It's in between the first level and the second level. Between a Nara, she's a Nara and not a Bageris yet. Bageris is the 12 and a half. So because she didn't have hair, we considered her to be a Katana. But now that we found out that she's an islandess because she's 18 and she still doesn't have hair, so they should go back and he should have to pay. According to Rav. Rav says you go back and you say, well, that's what she was back then.
So the question is, did she skip a stage?
Oh, so 1 second. So Amalei Abaya Mikatnusi Yatzel Abaya. That's Abaya's teretz. Abaya's answer is that she skips a stage. There was no stage over there where she's in between a katana and a baigeres. Yeah. Amalei. Rabbi Yosef asked the question. Abaya gave him the answer. Apparently, there was a version of this Gemara where he said, "You were the one that told me," because Rabbi Yosef, remember, he forgot all his learning, and Abaya would remind him things that he said. So now he's excited about something that he said. He said, "Oh, you should say such nice, all such nice answers should come from me. It should say in my name, because this was something that Abaya reminded him." That's at least according to another version of this text. Okay. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Ein asaris nidin can ben seir mar if you shein ben seir mar nidin la bechsim asakan atachten. Vein eilenes nidanis kenara marasa shemikatnusi yatz lebagar. Taught in a brisa that someone that's a saris, a eunuch, can never be a ben seir mar. Lucky him. Ben seir mar can only be if he's in between 13 and 13 and a half or something. Because once he has enough hair, pubic hair, he's totally full of hair, so then he's already considered older. He's not considered at that level, at that stage. And an islandess can never be Nara Marasa, never be the girl that's raped. Why? Because, to get the fine, to get the fee. Because she skips that stage. She goes from a katan to a bageres. Amar Rabavo, Simani Saris Violines, who ben Shmaina, in Oisim ben Maisad, she ben Esrim. Okay. It was a sort of a shocking Gemara, but the first part is fine. We can accept the first part. The second part is a little shocking. How do we know if a person is a eunuch or an islandess? It takes them until age 20. There's one other case in this Gemara. If someone is an 8th month baby, so you know that there were 2 types of pregnancies. There was a 7-month pregnancy and a 9-month pregnancy. That's how it worked back then. Both of them were viable. But the problem was an 8th month pregnancy was not viable. So how do you know if it's really an 8th month pregnancy? Well, you see if it. You see if the body was developed. If it was fully developed, then maybe it was a 7-month, but just lasted longer. But it just waited longer. It was really a 7-month pregnancy. The question is not when it comes out. The question is what type of pregnancy it was. So if it comes out in the 8th month, so you'd have to check. Now, there's certain ways that you treat this child because it's not a viable child. We consider it like as if it's not alive, to keep it alive. But there's other issues of muktzah and other things that secondary laws because of this. So until age 20, you put it in that status.
20 years you keep
20
it.
years, yeah. This is like that the abortion question. When is the child not considered when is it considered a real life? It's when they graduate from medical school. And 20 years old.
Until they retire.
Until they retire. Yeah, there's something shocking about this Gemara. So whatever the case is, at least the way Rashi is learning it. The Gemara asks, "Ben Shmeina mikachaya? Can an 8th month baby live so long?" Vatani ben Shmeina rekevan vasataltlei aval imei soichal of minikasei. On Shabbos, we assume that it's not going to survive the day, or at least that month. So the mother that wants to keep it alive, which is important for her to nurse, and it's important to to keep the baby alive, but he's not supposed to move the baby because we don't consider it fully alive. So she leans over the baby and nurses the baby without moving the baby.
What exactly is the issue of the 8th month per se, not opposed to a 7th month or 9th month?
Apparently,
Based off the 9 months of pregnancy.
the babies that didn't survive, the baby were all considered 8th month babies.
Mhm.
That was like
they found something.
it was something to do with being the 8th month. Yeah, they considered it an 8th month baby. Infant mortality was it was the 8th month baby. That's what it seems.
But nowadays, that's like a superstition.
Come from a one-line statement from, learn this, a
Yeah.
one-line statement from who, I forget, about 7-month or 9-month. I had no idea that's.
By Shmuel, it says
With Shmuel,
by
yeah.
Yeledis by Hiletz Kufas Hayamim. It was 6 months and 2 days. So we said, a 7th month baby doesn't have to be fully 7 months.
It's about the paternity of Shmuel.
Yeah.
Who would have thought of that practical
Right.
statement?
Uh-huh. Gemara says, so we're saying over here that how is it living till 20? We didn't think that it could live. We're saying no. It was clear that it was Shagamru Simanov. Titania. How do you know Gamru Simanov? What does it mean? It was a full it was really, it wasn't a pre what's it called? Preemie. That's the word? No. That's the full word? No. What's the full word? That's like a premature birth. Yeah. The Tanya is a ben shmeina. What is considered a ben shmeina? Kol shlei kol lechadashav. It was a premature birth. Rabbi Yomer simanav mechichan alav. You can see from its development what it is. Sari v'tzipanav shalei gamru. if the hair and the nails are not complete, then it's a premature birth. So what's Rabbi Vo telling me? I'm not following what the pshat is over here. What it says, if this is what it says, and I'll tell you the problem. What it says is that it's considered a full birth, a full pregnancy if its nails and hair are there. So then Rebbe says, but you still have to wait till it's 20 to know for sure. The problem is, what is it telling me I have to wait till 20? If that's good enough, then that should be good enough. For some reason, not Rebbe, Rabbi Vo said before you have to wait until 20. Okay. So apparently it can hang out in the womb even after it's fully developed. It's a 7-month birth, but it can wait an extra month to come out, and then we're all confused. So we say like this. There was a story with Rabbi Teisva. There was a woman, her husband went for 12 months away, and the woman had a baby after 12 months, or at 12 months. Now there's a little bit of a problem there because pregnancy is only 9 months, and the husband wasn't around for 12 months. So who is the father of this baby? Rabbi Teisva says, oh, it was a 9-month pregnancy, but it just lasted for 12 months because the baby didn't come out. Now, who would that fit with? That would fit with Rebbe. That Rebbe just was the one that just said that a 7th-month pregnancy can wait till the 8th month. So apparently the baby can wait inside for longer than the normal pregnancy. The Gemara says, well, I also have Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel also says this. So therefore, it's not just the opinion of Rebbe. Rabbi Teisva was following the majority. The time Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, if it waits 30 days, then it's not considered a nafel, even if it was born early.
Wait 30 days from what?
From the birth.
What's 30 days?
30 days after the birth, it's not considered a stillborn.
If he lives.
If it survives 30 days. The only thing that throws me off over here is the 20 years for this. Because 30 days would do it. 30 days with the hair and the nails. So what is the 20 years doing? Any comment over there about the 20 years? Is it like a huge problem?
It's like on probation for 20 years.
So yeah, I don't know. He's muksa for 20 years.
He should have been born.
I don't know.
Those first 20 years, it wasn't viable.
Yeah, but I thought we're saying that Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that it's only 30 days would do it.
Yeah, so
So what are the 20 years doing?
got to edit it out. There's no sign.
Okay, let's leave it over here. We'll continue learn tomorrow.
Just gonna leave it there
Hashem.
like a cliffhanger.
Yeah. We're up to Tanur Rabbanu. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.